Hello and welcome to Becky Live. I'm Becky Andre, and I'm going to be your host for what's an intimate conversation about various leadership topics. So my focus with Becky Live is just to provide a few frames or ways of exploring a topic to expand your awareness and thinking. My hope that this isn't just a consumption of knowledge, rather that it sparks your thinking and you want to discuss with others around you. The frames are recorded and I post them on YouTube. The intimate conversation is not recorded and happens when you join me live. So if you're interested in joining a live session, sign up for our newsletter to be notified or follow me on LinkedIn. Both links will be in the comments section of the video. And so today's topics are reflections. And if you watched any of my past videos, you know I typically have a PowerPoint presentation. I typically walk you through kind of the academic research. And while I'm going to bring in some of the academic aspects, as I was preparing for this topic, what I was leaning into is just the process of reflection, and also kind of thinking about the benefits and also the possible kind of negative outcomes of reflection. So I'm not going to go through a PowerPoint today. I'm just going to share some of my thoughts of how I think about reflection, and hopefully they spark some thoughts for you as well. So what really struck me as I was getting ready to talk about reflection was really the process and thinking about what happens with reflection. And I started with what draws us into reflection. And what really resonated with me was that there is typically some sort of activating event that sparks the reflection. Now, it might be something spontaneous. So it might be an experience. It might be a piece of music. It might be a poem. It could be a book we read, but something just spontaneously comes across in our lives, and it activates this point of reflection. There are also things like habits or rituals. So, some of our rituals are based in kind of religious or ways of being. But there's also habits that we have. So we might have habits of, waking up every morning to have a cup of coffee and just sitting in the morning sunlight as the sun is coming up. And it might be kind of that habit of being in that moment and being present and reflecting on things. I think it can also be an activating event for reflection can also be attraction or being repelled by something. So, these things that we're drawn to, whether it's a place, a person, or a thing, or a concept, but we're just really drawn to it, or we are really repelled by that, could also be a moment of reflection. So for me, reflection it begins with this activating event that I see that can show up in many different ways. And then I think about the process itself, and it definitely can be individual, where I'm reflecting on things. So I've had this activating event. It's maybe created a greater awareness for me or a new insight, or that I'm reflecting on what that means for me and just sitting with it. I think it can also be relational. So I might have an activating event, I might have some thoughts, and I might engage in either a conversation or an inquiry, maybe with some text or something, where I'm having a relationship with kind of processing through this reflection. I think it can also be collective in that there can be things kind of beyond this moment or space. And when you think about kind of indigenous ways, being able to connect to what has happened in the past, what's happening in the present, and being reflective on 7 generations forward. So it's not always just in this moment or time. Sometimes it's about a greater timeline than what our life is going to span for our reflection. And then I think about kind of, well, what then happens with it? Well, sometimes it's integrated. Something changes for us. There's some sort of activity. It might happen in the moment. It might happen 6 months later. sometimes we just have a new relationship with it or a new understanding, or it might just kind of be part of the collective relationship of we've processed kind of our work, and it just kind of flows into the collective or the way in which we engage within the community. So I see kind of this process of reflection of there's some sort of activating event. There's a way that we process or integrate or think about it. We actually do the reflection. And then there's some sort of outcome, whether it's an action, an insight, or it might be conscious or unconscious in the ways that we've integrated it. And then when I think about reflection, I think about the benefits. So definitely there are some brain mechanics that go on that reflection is really useful. When we're learning something and we're reflecting on, it actually creates a signal for our brain to file the information appropriately. All right. So as we're kind of like taking in information, it's like if we reflect on it, it's telling the brain, all right, take this piece of paper and file it away in the filing cabinet where we can easily get to it. Versus, this information that we have on this piece of paper, just crumple it up and throw it in the corner, right? It's there, but it's going to be harder to access. There's also this aspect with adult development where it's the iterative process of reflecting that actually prepares our mind to shift and move, that we actually can see things in a more expanded way. And we have kind of this cognitive complexity that shifts and changes, or even a greater awareness of our attachment to ego. And then when I think about some other benefits, there really is kind of this awareness that might happen, or this deeper sense of knowing that happens in this reflection. And one thing that really struck me in the past couple of weeks, I listened to a spiritual teacher talk about contemplation. And he referenced Thomas Merton in his New Seeds of Contemplation. And what really struck me with some of the passages that were pulled out is as we kind of have this relationship with reflection and contemplation and thinking about things, he was talking about it from the aspect of God. But even just you replace that with any kind of concept or construct, what happens is when you are in this contemplation and this reflection and you begin to have a deeper knowing, and I might even suggest a deeper relationship with it, it shifts and changes, right? Both my attachment to it, as well as how I kind of view it, or how I even feel it or experience it. So I think there's a lot of positive outcomes for reflection. And yet there are also some aspects that I think can also be negative. And I think this happens when reflection is really done in more of a shallow way, or in a way that is self-serving. So there are things like, we all have tendencies to be a bit narcissistic, but I think sometimes reflection can reinforce kind of narcissistic views. Because again, it might not be done in relationship with other people. It might just be done in a shallow way with just my own thoughts. I think it can also, reflection can also be kind of architected or done in a way that just reinforces some collective entrenchment or some collective beliefs. And you see this sometimes in religious rituals where it's not really about a deeper knowing or a deeper awareness. It's really about just going through this ritual to make sure you have a really firm attachment to a particular belief. All right. I think the other part of reflection that can be somewhat negative, although, it's kind of a benefit too, but it's also a negative, is that it can be very isolating. And I mean that in the sense that if you are a reflective person and you think deeply about things and you're building this deeper awareness and this deeper knowing, it can feel very lonely and very isolating that others around you don't have this or do this at a very superficial level. Yeah, so that's just some of my thoughts for today on reflection. And I know for me personally, reflection has been a really key element for me. And one of the things I recently did is I took a 31-day sabbatical and I chose 10 words to be in reflection with over the course of my 31 days. And it was really amazing to see kind of what was present for me every day, what emerged as a new knowing or a new awareness or a deeper relationship, and even just some awareness of just some extreme gratitude for the life that I've had to this point, as well as a really clear understanding of the aspects that I'm longing for that means I need to shift some of my actions or some of the ways in which I show up in the world so that those longings have a chance to be fulfilled. So reflection can be a really powerful moment. It also can be a moment of needing to learn to sit in our emotions and with our, and kind of what the indigenous elders would tell me of sitting in the fire. But it really is that aspect that helps us mature. It helps us grow and develop and to see things in new and expanded ways. And with the complex problems that are facing us today, I think that's a really key element. So thanks for joining me today. Thanks for listening. And I hope that you'll join us at a future Becky Live session.